we've already built a lot of wall. We're building a lot more, just through the normal budget. But we just gave out a contract that when it's all completed out, it'll be 115 miles. That's a lot. We're talking about 500 to 550 miles. And this will be just as one contract is 115. I'm going there. I assume you're coming with me on probably the end of January. We have a problem with the Democrats because Nancy Pelosi is calling the shots, not Chuck. And Chuck wants to have this done. I really believe that. He wants to have this done. But she's calling the shots, and she's calling them because she wants the votes.
Still trying to get the details of that contract on the border wall. The president talking about that and border security while traveling to see troops overseas, tweeting out, have the Democrats finally realized that we desperately need border security and a wall on the southern border, need to stop drugs, human trafficking, gang members and criminals from coming into our country. Do the Dems realize that most of the people not getting paid are Democrats? Also tweeting out, there is right now a full-scale manhunt going on in California for an illegal immigrant accused of shooting and killing a police officer during a traffic stop. Time to get tough on border security and build the wall. That is in fact true. There is a manhunt underway. Sheriff's deputies say the suspect was seen on camera, security footage buying beer at a convenience store. They believe he is in fact an illegal immigrant, and he shot and killed an officer, Officer Singh, Wednesday after being pulled over in a gray pickup truck. That is all the backdrop to which this partial government shutdown continues. Let's bring in our panel. Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. And Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report. Jason, your thoughts on the context here, on the big picture of all of this?
Well, the Democrats seem to be pushing for Trump to abandon any wall funding, which I think is very unrealistic, Brett. I think the smarter move would be for Democrats to offer some funding in return for something they want, such as amnesty for the Dreamers, who are very popular with people from both parties. In the short run, I don't think that this shutdown is really hurting the president. His supporters want it. He campaigned on it. They want him to fulfill a campaign promise. And I think Trump has become convinced that if he doesn't continue to push for this wall and show some progress on this front, he will hurt his standing with his base, and he could be right about that. I think the argument for him doing something now versus next year is that I think he has the stronger hand right now. As you mentioned earlier in the show, that $5 billion that was approved earlier this month, that goes kaput in January. And when Nancy Pelosi writes a new spending bill with her caucus, it will almost certainly contain less than $5 billion for a wall.
Amy, this hunt for this illegal immigrant who shot and killed a police officer, the sheriff's office out there talking about the officer who was killed. Take a listen. Randy Richards.
Yes, he was a police officer, but what needs to be known is that he was truly just a human being and an American patriot. Ron was not born in America. Ron was born in Fiji. He came to this country with one purpose, and that was to serve this country.
33-year-old Ron Singh killed in that shooting. We've seen these incidents before, Amy, the Kate Steinle case out in California, that affected the broader picture on border security in one way or another. Is this one of those moments?
Well, it's a really horrible and tragic story. And you're right, Brett, to note that we have had a lot of stories like this. We've had a lot of discussion about the wall. We've had the caravan. We've had an election. We've had politicization of the wall throughout the last 2 years. And when you look, though, at opinions of the wall, they literally have not changed since the 2016 campaign. I went back and I looked at the Quinnipiac poll in November of 2016. Support for the wall, 42%, opposition, 55%. 2 years later, now we're in December of 2018, support for the wall, 43%, and 54% disagree. So with the idea of a wall. So the reality is that we have, over these last 2 years, we've not seen any minds changed on the opinion of the wall, despite all the other things that are going on around it. And instead, what we're getting is, instead of broadening of coalitions for either side, they're just hardening and deepening.
Molly.
And you're seeing that in this shutdown of the government. Both sides seem to think that they have the upper hand. I think that Democrats really believe that denying Trump a victory on border wall funding is absolutely key. They know that this was something he campaigned on. They know that this is something that does have a lot of support. 40+% of the American people wanting a wall is something that has a huge backing for it. And even more than a wall, there are greater concerns about border security, which I think is a much more compromised position that people on both left and right care deeply about. But at the same time, Trump thinks he's got a strong hand because 75% of the government is funded. He thinks that it shows that he cares about this issue, that he's willing to get credit for shutting down the government by that he cares so much that he's willing to go to that extent. And so there is this intractability in this fight. I do think that while the wall itself might be, with the numbers that Amy's talking about, concern about border security is a long-standing concern that goes back decades, and that there's a lot of frustration that the government has done so little to ensure the security of our borders.
You know, we saw Peter Doocy up on Capitol Hill, basically the only person up on Capitol Hill, Jason. It seemed like there were tumbleweeds going down the halls, and they'll be out until Monday. Meantime, the blame game continues, Republicans and Democrats. Take a listen.
The needle has moved towards a very long shutdown just because of the impasse that we're seeing and the unwillingness of Democrats to actually engage in meaningful dialogue.
Nobody likes the stress of the uncertainty. Public servants want to go to work. They don't want to be idled, and they certainly don't want to think this could go on for weeks. It is a great shame to this administration and to the outgoing Republican Congress that we've arrived at this kind of point.
Just the past minute, Jason, the president tweeting out, this isn't about the wall. Everybody knows that a wall will work perfectly. In Israel, the wall works 99.9%. This is only about the Dems not letting Donald Trump and the Republicans have a win. They may have the 10 Senate votes, but we have the issue, border security 2020. That was about a few minutes ago. Jason.
Yeah, I think the president is right, that this is about the resistance not wanting to give him any quarter on any issue, including this issue. But I think that in the larger sense, the public is with the president in the sense of caring about border security much more than Democrats seem to care about border security. And we see this not only in their opposition to physical barriers, we see this in their attacks on ICE, abolish border enforcement of any kind, their support for sanctuary cities and so forth. They just are not, they don't look serious about border security of any kind, Jason, regardless of whether we're just talking about a wall.
Why didn't that work for the midterms? Why didn't it work in the districts that were suburbs outside of big cities? Why didn't the issue work? Because obviously the president was hitting it hard in the lead up to the midterms.
Well, I think there were other concerns that people had in their mind. And I think that, you know, the public did increase the Republican majority in the Senate while it turned control of the House over to Democrats. But I don't know that, I think Trump felt as if he didn't harp on this, the losses would have been even greater than they were. Now, that's difficult to prove, but I think that is his thinking on this issue. But his base is with him on this, Brett. In the short run, I really don't see him feeling a lot of pain on this. In the long run, perhaps if this goes on and on and on, then perhaps maybe you'll see some negative, a negative response to Trump on this issue, but not right now. I don't think it's been going on long enough. And we're so far away from 2020 that I don't think it's going to have an impact on that either.
Short answer, Amy, then Molly. Do we get a deal in the next days after Monday?
We're not going to get a deal until the new Congress is in place, and even then we're going to have a debate for a little while longer. But at some point, there are no winners in this. There are only losers. It's just a question of who looks less bad.
I actually think there is room for a win here in that Democrats can bring back DACA and talk about resolving that issue without having the courts settle everything. And you can get border security, and it seems like it would be a great time for people to get a little bit of what they want on both sides.
We shall see.